1, 2, 3, 4. If you can do all your stuff, what can figure it out? That's how it chooses you.
What you been doing this morning? Having some coffee times?
Nothing much this morning. I do have a couple follow-ups from last week.
Good. You had homework. Tell me about it. Yeah. Oh, well, if you're going to dive right in to referring to a former episode, we should tell everybody. We should just confirm for them that this is, in fact, It Chooses You.
Yes, and I am, in fact, Claire Patton.
And I am, in fact, Teresa Sparks. We talk about shit we like.
That's right. This podcast is all facts.
That's
all
right.
the time.
That's right. No opinion. No editorializing. Straight up facts. It's basically a spreadsheet in audio form.
That's right. Column 1.
Yes.
Facts.
Column 1, Claire's homework from last week. So you had 2 pieces of homework. What were they?
I did. I said that I would voluntarily reorganize something. That is, choose to reorganize something, not because I'm about to go insane, but because I care for my space. And I did that. I sent you a picture. I reorganized my kitchen shelves.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great.
It was beautiful.
It's lovely. And then I also said I would do some research on how they made the talking horse, Mr. Ed, move his lips.
That's right.
So the peanut butter thing...
We speculated there was bestiality involved.
Yeah, and I don't know where the hell that came from, because that does not seem to be true, everybody. Just... Again, facts.
Yeah, you would hope someone in the room, if that was happening, would be like, guys? This is a little weird.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable that my livelihood is dependent on this action.
Yeah. Well, so the peanut butter in the mouth thing is like the most prevalent guess. And I found out where that came from, which is one of the actors from the show went public and, on all the interview shows and everything was like, oh, we just put peanut butter in his mouth. And I assume that's because like that sounds cute. I don't know. But it does not seem like it is in fact true.
The peanut butter thing's not true either.
No, it does not seem like it is.
I love your characterization of that guy, that like bumbling white dude.
Yeah. Don't y'all think that's cute? Come watch our show. Like, I don't know. It was probably after the fact that he started saying that. But this is what I have read and feels the most correct to me because it's technical and uninteresting. Well, it's interesting, but, it's just very dry. Apparently, they had a nylon bit for the horse's mouth.
Oh.
Obviously nylon so that it wouldn't show. And the horse would react to the bit by moving his mouth. They did say that eventually the horse was well trained enough that the bit wasn't even needed and the trainer would just touch his hoof and he would start doing it. So that is what I discovered, folks. So again, a podcast filled with nothing but facts.
True facts. That's right. Well, the things I'm going to tell you about today, I'm very excited about them. Because one of them ended up in a really weird place, and I'm very happy about that.
Cool,
it's always fun when the research is like, holy shit, what room am I in now? Where did I get to? That's always fun for me. So I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited because the idea for this came off of your story last week, because I was thinking about rich stuff. And like, what do rich people like?
Yeah.
What do you do? I'm interested in both sides. I'm interested in like the precondition for the behavior. Like, I'm interested in money. Money's cool. I'm also interested in how people behave when they have it.
Mm-hmm.
So, fascinating. So I went down a couple different rabbit holes. I'll go ahead and cite most of my sources at the top here. So I looked at, of course, Wikipedia, Vice, San Francisco Call newspaper, New York Times Review of Books, and then some other random weird ones, including one called miningswindles.com.
Wow.
There's a website called miningswindles.com. Someone's really interested in that. I just thought I loved
They purchased that domain.
That's right. Let me get on that. That's going to be in demand. Everyone's going to want to talk about that. So yeah, I've been thinking about Rich Stuff and of course Goonies all week. And that treasure piece, like the discovery of something of value where you didn't expect to find it. Oh, so good.
It's such I don't know what it is psychologically.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I think it builds into our desire to survive, right? But
sure. Yeah.
that idea of discovering something is so fascinating to our human psyches, I think.
Yeah. Well, and in any movie, the best scene ever in any like heist movie is when they open the tiny black velvet bag and pour diamonds out onto a black velvet cushion. God, that's the best moment. I love that. Yeah, nothing better. Right. So thinking about what people do when they're rich, I was like, what is something? Like I was on the hunt for cultural artifacts, basically, that just scream, hey, I have a lot of money. I mean, a gold toilet is probably one of them. But I'm not interested in that motherfucker. So I'm not going to talk about him. But eventually, so I was looking through stuff and I came to a category that I have named architectural follies. I haven't named it that. They're called that. But in relation to this, architectural follies is where I landed. And I had a theory that was borne out in my research that when you're the kind of rich that can build lakes on your own property, there's probably some batshit stuff in your past.
Totally.
Like, when you've got that kind of money, like is there a way to accumulate that kind of money without something either illegal, immoral, or crazy happening? I don't know. I'd be interested to find out.
Good point.
So this is, unfortunately for all of our listeners, this is a very visual episode because I'm talking about constructions, right? Right. So you need to get on your computer, please. And look up I'll do it one at a time because I don't want to preload you on the second one I'm going to talk about. Okay, you are going to look up underwater ballroom, and that should bring it up. The estate is called Whitley Park, Whitley Park. So while Claire is looking at that or getting that up, I'll go ahead and start. I'm only going to talk about a couple people and their follies. First, I'm going to tell you about the underwater ballroom on Whitaker Wright's estate, Whitley Park. Like everything associated with him, it was doomed. It still exists, but it's doomed. Okay. You got it?
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing?
It's really cool. And it's also like super molding and
algae.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
which makes it kind of creepy.
Yeah. So this underwater ballroom, he essentially bought this property because he was incredibly wealthy, and he dug.
What's his name?
Whitaker Wright. Okay. He bought this property, I think, in 1896 or something like that. Oh, 1894. It says it right there. So he bought it in 1894, and there was already a house and something like 9,000 acres of land. Like it was an estate already. And he was like, that's mine. And then he proceeded to do millions and millions of dollars of restoration, alteration, construction, etc. And the coolest thing he did, I think, is build this underwater ballroom. He had that lake dug, first of all. So that's a hand-dug lake. He dug a lake. He built what looks like a concrete tunnel, and concrete existed then. Concrete's been around for a really long time. He built a concrete tunnel under the lake, leading to a room in the center of the lake that he was going to use as like a smoking room. It's called a ballroom because it has a really high ceiling and all of the windows are above you. So it's skylit, right? So people call it a ballroom, but he intended it to be more of a smoking room. And, you know, the kind of money that has a specific room for that. Can he just smoke a joint on his porch like the rest of us? No, apparently not. There's an under lake room dedicated for that. And so the room is a circular room with a dome, and on top of the dome is like a plinth with a statue of Neptune. And the plinth and the statue are above the level of the lake. So you look out over the lake and, oh, there's a beautiful statue in the middle of the lake. And on the shore, there's a manhole that you open and go down a spiral staircase to get to the tunnel that leads to the room. So you're outside, you're taking a stroll around the grounds. Let's go in this hole in the ground. Yes, we are under the lake. Why are you so nervous? And it looks like, I mean, he's the kind of dude who built himself the Slytherin common room. Like, that's essentially what that is. It's a hangout, chill space underwater. So, you know, it says a lot about his character.
It's a lair.
It is. It's a lair. That's correct. Yes. A lair for slimy things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Vice magazine says that Whitaker Wright was a charming, gregarious businessman who also happened to be a giant fraud and criminal. He was born to humble beginnings. His father was a minister, and when Whitaker was born, his family set him up to become a minister too. So as an adult, he preached for like 2 years before he's like, you know, I'm really good at making people happy. I'm good at making them believe in me, getting them to trust me, super good at all those things. Surely I can make more money than this, right? He left the ministry due to, quote, ill health. Which is like, I suppose it wouldn't be easy to just tell everyone, yeah, I stopped believing in God. I started believing in money. Peace out.
Yeah, the church doesn't take too kindly to that.
No, and you know, his family was like, you're going to be a minister like your father. This is, you know, and I think they were Methodists. So even in a relatively chill religion, chill franchise of the Christianity thing, yeah, too much. So he left. He and his brother set up a business that immediately failed. And when their first business failed, his father died. Basically like, you're such a disappointment to me that I can no longer live. So when his father...
He died from disappointment.
That's right.
His children.
He broke his father's heart. And when he broke his father's heart, Whitaker then emigrated to Canada and began making money promoting, is what it was called. Like, he becomes a club promoter. I mean, could he be any more Slytherin, right? Promoting various gold and silver mines in Colorado, in Leadville, and also in Australia and in Canada. So he's basically, promoting is basically like, hey, I know about this great investment opportunity. I've been to this mine. Here are the reports about how rich it is in gold or silver or something else valuable. Here's what you can expect to make. We're selling shares. Don't you want to buy 100 of them from me? Okay, so that's his job. I just love that mine promoter is like a job at this point. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and the fact that he was like, no, that feels right. You know?
Yeah, he's like, yeah, no, that's accurate. Yeah, photography didn't exist when he started. I think he started this in like the 1850s, 1860s, like just after the Civil War, basically, right? Oh no, he was born in 1846, so it must have been in the 1860s or later. And it was just like, yeah, this is perfect. And it was like things that weren't illegal then were things like throwing a bunch of gold down, like just inside the front door of the mine. So that if anybody came to check on it, you just open the door and there'd be just a bunch of gold there. Look how rich this mine is. We haven't even bothered to gather the gold that's right by the front door here. Yeah. Not illegal. Not illegal to do that. Salting the claim, totally legal back in the day. And pictures don't exist. So it's just like his story about what's happening at this and the richness of the area and how his travel to get there or whatever it was, you know? Salesman. Awesome salesman. So he made millions of dollars talking people into buying shares of mining companies that all eventually went bankrupt.
Jesus
Okay?
Christ.
So shady as fuck, but not illegal yet, okay? As a 19th century English journalist wrote of him, he cast a binding spell over every individual, high or low, with whom he came into contact. Those he did business with found him affable, suave, and generous, and said he was a welcome contrast from the usual wooden-faced financiers of the time. So he did very well. But you know, like, if you're looking for seriousness in a person, you want your accountant to be like, if someone holds the future happiness of your entire family in the palm of their spreadsheet, you want that to be a serious person, right? Yeah. No, you don't. You want someone who's going to tell you a really good story and also take care of the money, right? Yeah.
You want a flesh-faced fast talker.
That's right.
who can weave quite a tale.
Yes, Good Time Charlie with the gold mines in Australia. Newspaper reports said that that only promoters got rich off of this kind of business, but it was perfectly legal, like I said. Capitalism's fucking crazy. Okay, so what's he's gonna do? Yep,
I like it.
That's it. What's he's gonna do? What's he's gonna do now he's rich? Yeah, he's gonna build a huge gaudy estate for himself. That's what he does. So he bought Whitley Park in 1894. The main house on the estate was a 32-room mansion, and he immediately just knocked down half of it and started reconstructing it.
And where is this?
It's in Surrey, in England.
Okay. And he was American?
He was English. No, he was English.
Oh, okay.
He was English. When his father died, he fled/emigrated to Canada and spent time in Canada and America and Australia. He married an American.
Okay.
And then he got a little money together, and he's like, and now I'm going home, and I'm going to show everyone that I am a success. Check out my giant lake. Okay. He spent, like I said, millions of dollars, doing heavy landscaping on this. So much so that in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when no one gave a shit about ecosystems, right? Wasn't a hot topic. The county was like, he's doing a lot of stuff over there. It's 9,000 acres. And what's he gonna do to the wildlife? And it's all related to rich people sports like hunting and horses and whatever the fuck, right? But he was so out there that he made people care about ecology. That's the kind of influence this guy had on his neighbors. He bought marble from Italy for the statues. He built a revolving glass dome over a palm house, like a greenhouse kind of thing. But the most famous addition was this underwater domed conservatory / smoking room. And as you saw in those photos, algae's over the windows, so the light was really filtered and green, and yeah.
I just want to stop and say one thing.
Yeah.
I would bet all my nuns of money that at one point on that land, at least once, there was a human hunt.
So your thesis is that actually what this property is like the island of Dr. Moreau, but in Surrey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what the neighbors were really concerned about is that their nephews kept going missing.
Yeah. And I'm not proposing that he was super into it. Maybe he just dipped a toe, but I'm saying at least once.
Yeah, no. He just hosted it. He's an entertainer. He's a grand entertainer. He loves throwing parties and wonderful. Oh, it's marvelous. It's so great. This is Duncan. You guys are going to be chasing Duncan tonight. Duncan, are you ready? Oh my God. Okay. So he had a company called the London and Globe Company, and he recruited to be the chairman of his board the Marquis of Dufferin and Ava.
Well, that sounds fancy as fuck.
It is actually fancy as fuck. So this guy was he's described as a dutiful public servant. He was at one point a viceroy of India. So basically the British king of India, right? Mm-hmm. And he's the man that miningswindles.com calls Wright's prized guinea pig. He was recruited so that Wright could continue making friends among the peerage. Okay, so I actually went down a rabbit hole of which titles are more powerful than others in England, and apparently it's different country by country, which makes sense. But in England, Marquis is just below royal. It's almost, so Duke is the highest, Prince is obviously, Prince and King, right? So King, if we're gonna do a hierarchy like the taxonomy, kingdom, phylum, class, order, right? Okay, so King, Prince, Duke, Marquis, right?
Got it.
Really close, okay? And so he recruited this guy so that he would then have, begin to have access. And he couldn't have recruited him unless he had already made some friends. And, it's a social binding thing. Once you're inside that community, everyone's like, oh, I've met him. Well, he must be okay because everyone I know has met him,
Right.
That kind of thing. Once the wasp is in the beehive, all the bees are like, oh, you must be supposed to be here. Well, have fun, man. You want some honey? So Yeah, he had this incredible this peer, right, as the chairman of the board of his company. He didn't ever cross the line into outright swindling until he jumped industries. He went away from mines. He left his first love, fake mines. And he was living in Surrey, and he floated a bond issue, which I think is the same as selling shares, but just different lingo. Like financiers, please write in. It chooses you podcast at Gmail. Investment bankers, please contact us. He floated this bond issue to build a new subway line in London, Baker Street and Waterloo, which is now called the Bakerloo line. And as it was under construction, they're like, holy shit, this is really hard. There are a lot of interruptions and whatever. And people weren't jazzed about buying shares or buying bonds to pay for this thing. So he had like overreached his own financial abilities anyway, probably out of ego. Yes, I built this subway line, right?
Mm-hmm.
For all of his richy friends. So he overextended in the first place, and then nobody was fucking biting. And imagine like you're a guy who can make Martha and Gus give you their life savings for a gold mine in Australia that they're never going to see. And then suddenly this thing, no one's buying your shit anymore.
Do you think it's because the subway line is way less sexy than like the potential of a mine filled with gold?
Yes, that could be part of it. I think it probably has more to do with like some kind of American optimism that the British were like, nah, that's not cool. No, we're not. That's not on. We're not getting involved with that. Whereas Americans are like, oh my gosh, anything's possible. You know, especially in the late 1800s, America was rich as fuck. Like railroads were being built and everyone was making $1 million. You know, I mean, just we had so much. Such a powerful economy, right? So he went from a place where people had money to give a good time Charlie who wanted to sell him a gold mine to a place where people were like, what's your name again? Anyway, so he was just having a really hard time, and you can't fuck up publicly if you want to be friends with the king. Like, you really got to have your shit together, at least on the surface, right? And so he started doing the shell game that all rich people do when they get into this situation, which is that one of his companies would loan his other company a certain amount of money, and then that company would loan a third company. And he basically just muddied the financial paperwork waters so much that he was like, no, nothing to see here, as he was going bankrupt, right? And so he has this money that's based on basically like speculative interest in his company. So his company can't, right? It's just insane. It's like
they monetize hope.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's actually the best description of capitalism I've ever heard. Monetize hope. That's right. But maybe it will work. Yeah.
Cha-ching.
Okay. Cha-ching. All right, so obviously you can't do that forever because you have shareholders who expect dividends. And so at one point he wrote a letter. He said, everything's going great, but nobody gets any dividends this quarter. And everyone was like, hold on a second.
They were like,
that's right.
Indescribable.
That's exactly right. There's nothing better than making fun of rich people.
Preposterous.
You don't have a giant walrus mustache, but as you were doing that impression, you definitely had a giant.
Oh yeah,
giant
I embodied the shit out of that.
You did. That was very good. Oh, okay. So he couldn't do it forever, and either when he was discovered or when he knew he was going to be discovered, I can't really figure it out. He fled to America. He's like, shit! I'm going to go back to where people give me money without problems. So the revelation of his financial ruin, this is a quote from one of the newspaper articles of the day, revelation of his financial ruin hit the London elite very hard. 20 firms of London stockbrokers went under in the aftermath. Jesus. That's how much money we're talking about. Oh, 20 firms went under when this guy was like, oh shit.
Well, and that's the thing about being rich that I have never understood and let's face it, may never understand, is like the impact your actions have. Mm-hmm. You know, like I feel like when you're poor, You know, it's like
You're just screaming into the void all the time.
exactly. When you're rich, it's. I mean, I will acknowledge there's a certain amount of pressure there too. You know, if you're a person with a conscience, which if you're wealthy, you might not be. I don't know, but you know, there's a certain amount of pressure of like, yeah, just having that impact. Like 20 firms went under because I left the country.
I mean, with that kind of pressure on you, you really understand why you need to hunt humans, right? I mean,
Exactly.
clearly there's no other option. Okay, so most of the people that had vested with him lost everything that they had put with him, and the humiliated Marquis of Dufferin and Ava actually died in the middle of the investigation. Like, faithful public servant, decent life for the standard of the day. I mean, he was a colonial overlord, sure, but so was everybody, right? And he was so humiliated, he died. He literally died of embarrassment. That's how powerful embarrassment is in Britain. You can die of it.
The hidden pandemic.
The hidden pandemic.
Too soon? Too soon? I don't know.
The silent pandemic.
Yeah.
Humiliation. All right. So the government of Britain, when studying the confusion of the paper trail of his companies, they couldn't see how they could do a government prosecution. So they didn't even sanction a trial. They're like, we can't do anything with this. There's nothing here for the government to pursue. So instead, the prosecution was brought by a group of angry shareholders who raised the money to fund a private investigator to find him and then prosecute him privately. So a warrant was issued for his arrest. And when they grabbed him in New York in 1903, he was like super shocked that they had come after him. He was like, oh, no, it's just a misunderstanding. I'm a friend of the king, don't you know? Like, it's totally fine.
Side note, private prosecution, excellent softcore porn title.
Oh, yeah, private prosecution. Well, now, I just have so many images running through my head right now. You're on fire this morning. That's amazing. The human hunting, though, I think is, like, at the very top. Oh, my God. Okay, so, like, super surprised. He's like, oh, it's just a misunderstanding. He thought he was going to be released. He's like, of course I'll go with you. I'm an upstanding, so whatever. He was brought back for trial in 1904, and he appeared before a judge who was real hostile to him because the judge was an expert in corporate law. I was like, the fuck? And the prosecutor was an expert in stock market procedure because he had been a broker before he started practicing law. And so he basically has this team that's, on the one hand, like explaining to the jury, because I guess in a private, I don't really understand the British legal system. Why is it a private trial, but then they still get a jury? I don't.
Well,
Whatever.
Step 1, guys in a bunch of wigs.
True.
Step 2, I don't know. Again, facts, people, facts. Learn them, use them, follow our example.
Yes. So basically they're explaining to everyone, yeah, this guy's fucked. No, really, he's fucked. Like, what are you doing? And they convicted him. So on 26th of January, 1904, he was convicted of fraud at the Royal Courts of Justice, and given a 7-year prison sentence, which at the time, I think prisons in England were labor camps, essentially. Like, it wasn't, I think, although he was wealthy, and if you're a prince, you get put in the Tower, which is basically a hotel, and you're allowed to get messages. Experts in British legal system, please, you know.
You know, you're allowed your subscription to Human Hunting Monthly. It's cush, man.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. It's cush. So, he was sentenced to 7 years. Immediately after sentencing, however, in a court anteroom, he took his own life by swallowing a cyanide pill and was found dead on the floor with a loaded revolver in his pocket. Some people assumed that it was there to be a backup in case the cyanide didn't kill him, but there's been some speculation he originally planned to take out his accusers in court and then shoot himself.
Oh my God.
Right? So he's like, no, I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding. But inside, of course, he's like, I have achieved this very high station in a very short number of years. I'm going to lose it all, right? And it all is not the money, because he'd already lost the money, and he was chilling in America running a new scam, I assume, right? Yeah. It's the it's the loss of social position that drove him to suicide, I would say. So this is a quote from the San Francisco Call article from January 27th, the day after he killed himself. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, Whitaker Wright was sentenced to 7 years penal servitude. Okay, it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh every time. I can't help
Penal servitude.
Penal servitude.
By the way, excellent title of a hardcore porn.
Is this the trilogy you're writing? You're going to do a softcore, a hardcore, and what's the third? Like snuff? Human Hunt?
Yeah, it's got to be. That's the only place to go. Softcore, hardcore, snuffcore.
That's right.
The progression.
Ooh. So at 3 o'clock this afternoon, Whitaker Wright was sentenced. At 4 o'clock, he lay dead on the floor of a small room in the law courts. Whether he took his own life by poison, or whether death in its natural course robbed the law of its fulfillment, will not be known definitely until a post-mortem examination is held. All indications, however, point to poisoning, and the great Plunger's friends accept no other theory. Plunger. I'm going to call you a plunger from now on. That's going to be you fucking plunger. The great plungers. So great. Until nearly 8 o'clock, the body of the man who had formerly controlled the world's markets and who had been courted by royalty remained on the floor of the room where he fell. For as a convicted felon, Wright's person had become the property of the crown. And they didn't want to fuck, and they're like, fuck it. Let him lay there. The Home Office finally gave permission for the removal, and the body was given over to the jurisdiction of the coroner. It now lies at Westminster Mortuary, where almost all the corpses taken from the Thames are laid out. So, bajillions of dollars, a year later, on a slab next to a bunch of suicides, or people who've been murdered.
Well, and that story plays out in the correct way, in the sense that, there's something fascinating about con men, which is basically what we're talking about, where it's like, when is the moment that it stops, dude? Like, that, he's in court and he's like, no, it's all good. It doesn't, you can have someone like that just completely pinned down, and they're still trying to do the tap dance thing.
Yeah.
The, hey, look over here. And it's like, of course, that's balanced by the moment when it gets real. It's something fucking horrible, like eating a cyanide pill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
was the only moment of reality in my mind of like the way the story plays, that the only moment of reality for this dude where he got real with himself and was like, I can't handle this.
It's over.
Yeah.
Couldn't handle the shame, right? Yeah, it's interesting too, because my gut reaction is that, a con man stops being a con man when he dies. That's just, it's a fundamental orientation to the world, right? If you're going to get something for nothing, and you have had a lot of success getting something for nothing in the past, why would you ever try and, quote, go legit, or like learn something or develop an actual skill or whatever? Yeah. I love con men. I think maybe con men is like, I'm going to put a pin in that for later.
That's a good one,
because it's definitely possible. I love Donald Crowhurst very much, and he was not an intentional con man, but it's definitely possible to like look at his story through that lens, right? Okay, so, he's dead. Some people are like, no, but he was such a great man. But that's basically just poor people he threw money at in his home village or whatever. The house was unfinished when he died and was put up for sale in October of 1905, but didn't find a buyer until 1909, when it was bought by, I think it's Viscount, William James Peary, chairman of the shipbuilders who built the Titanic.
Oh, geez.
Also, this is maybe
cursed.
Cursed, that's right. And not interesting to anyone but me, but a Marquis was his chairman of the board. A Viscount is like just above, it's like much lower, right? And so it went from being a property owned by a man who was associating at a certain level, and then owned by a man who was associating at a different one.
Yeah.
And the Titanic sailed in 1911, so this guy bought it in 1909, which could have been when he got the commission to build the fucking thing. It could be Titanic money that bought the place, right? I find that fascinating. In 1952, the mansion was destroyed in a fire. Oh, no. The ballroom still exists because it was protected under a lake.
It's called a fire barrier.
That's right. That he should, like, this is where we're going to go if there's a fire. Run to the lake. All right.
Get to the ballroom.
Houses have been built around it. And, like, the scar where the house is still there. But
So does the ballroom belong to anybody, or is it?
It's private property still.
Okay.
I'm unclear who owns it. I feel like they've parceled it out for subdivisions like you do, right?
Yeah.
But the ballroom is owned by a person, presumably, who Peary sold it to after the Titanic sunk.
Presumably Aquaman.
That's right. That is Aquaman's one piece of property on land. And it's only nominally on land. He bought like the 5 square feet where the manhole cover is. And then the lake. And that's all he bought. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's the story of Whitaker Wright, the Slytherin con man of the late 1800s.
Love it. And his stanky ballroom.
Stanky ballroom. His algae-covered ballroom. Okay, so the second folly I'm going to tell you about is the Park of Monsters in Italy, which I, in my head, imagined you would have heard of, but you're shaking your head.
No,
so
I've never heard of it.
Okay, this one gets real weird. Sorry, it's not that funny until I pay it off, but it does. Okay, this was maybe my most distressing period of research. Like yeah. And then
what happened to you? Are you okay? You seem changed. I was gonna say you seem a little different this week.
I'm okay. I'm okay. But yeah, no, I just I was taken aback by where I got to with this. So this is called the Park of Monsters, or Parco dei Mostri. My Italian is horrible. I'm going to, you just prepare yourself. It's in the Garden of Bomarzo on the grounds of the Orsini Palace, which is about 40 miles north of Rome. It was commissioned in 1552 by Prince Pier Francesco Orsini, and it was, quote, an expression of grief designed to shock. Okay? So this park, do you want to look it up while I tell everybody about it? This park isn't huge. It's, maybe 10 acres. Not huge. It's a sculpture garden, right? And so there are walkways and trees and plains and, well, not plains, but fields, with various sculptures sort of dotted throughout the landscape. And these sculptures they range in size from like a 5 or 6 foot long thing at the bottom of a staircase to a house. Oh, you're looking at the Wikipedia page?
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that shit amazing?
Let me just tell you what I'm looking at, guys, everybody. I am looking at what appears to be a tunnel encased in a monstrous face. It seems to be a wall of some kind, and the tunnel entrance is the mouth of the monster. That is incredible.
Isn't
the mouth
it
of the
amazing?
monster. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you about this prince. I'll tell you more about the sculpture garden and some specific pieces in there. So his nickname was Vicino. Is that how we say it? Vicino, Vicino.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He had just been in a war, fought in a war. He had one of his friends killed, and I could not find out why he had one of his friends killed. But he had been held ransom for years after the war, and then had come home, and as soon as he got home, his wife died. And so he basically had a bunch of shit that was terrible happen to him in a very short period of time, and, quote, racked with grief, he wanted to create something that would, like, look at how much I feel. It was kind of like that. Like, here is the darkness of my soul. Like that.
Right. And again, money, right? Like, you have the resources to inflict your grief upon the world.
Yes. Yes, that's right.
That's what wealth is. Having the money to inflict your grief upon the world.
Correct.
Or your emotional. Again, ramification. Like there is a reaction to what you're feeling. Because you have unlimited resources in which to manifest it into the world. Fucking That's great. Right. No one should have that much power.
Correct. So 1552, it was commissioned, which is like high Renaissance, right? Full on beauty, order, proportion. The human gaze is the center of the world. Our perspective is the perspective, right? All of that's going on. He hires to build this garden Piero Ligorio, who completed the Cathedral of St. Peter after the death of Michelangelo. So he hired like the dude, the Renaissance dude, to build this garden. But he requested, as money will tell you demanded, that the sculptures all were done in a Mannerist style instead of that Renaissance style. So Mannerism is like a 16th century version of Surrealism.
Okay.
Proportions are strange, perspectives are weird. It just represents a lot of chaos in the thinking and mixed metaphors and all kinds of stuff. So later, Surrealists actually loved it. Dali based his 1946 painting, The Temptation of St. Anthony, among other works, on his visit to this park.
Oh, okay.
And so in this sculpture garden, only the descriptions that are like engraved next to the sculpture provide an explanation for what the fuck is going on. Like, everyone looks at it and it's like, at this time Renaissance, it's like figures of classicism. Like, this is a sculpture of Aphrodite, or Venus, I guess, in Rome, as she rises from the whatever. So all like mythology, sculptures based on mythology, right? And then here's this park that's full of monsters done in a really disturbing, like, brutal style. And the only reason anyone knows what anything is that there's just a little note beside everything saying, this is an orc that is the mouth of hell,
Welcome to hell. You are now entering it through the mouth of a demon.
That's right. Among the pieces are a war elephant, a monstrous fish head, a giant tearing another giant in half. That one's like 15 feet tall and it's fucking intense. And then there's a house built on a tilt to disorient. Like, you're standing on the ground, but the house is the tilt, and
Is it a house to live in, or is it just part of the ambiance?
I think it's just a part of the ambiance. I don't believe it was ever inhabited. Yeah, inhabited. Nobody inhabited it.
Do you know what that reminds me of? Have you ever been driving through like the hills or mountains? This is an Eastern United States thing, and they have like the tilt house.
Did you just ask me if a girl raised in West Virginia has ever driven through the mountains in the Eastern United States? Is that what just happened? The answer is yes.
Well, and then come
mystery
across
spot.
Like
mystery spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like that. So there's an inscription in front of the hellmouth you saw. It's that thing is like 15 feet tall, 15 feet wide. There's a mouth. It has to be taller than that, actually, because the mouth is tall enough for a person to walk in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a stone face in the side of the hill, and the mouth is an open hole that you can like walk into. Okay,
does it go anywhere?
I will tell you.
Okay.
It's called the Mouth of Hell, and that doorway opens into a little room with a stone table carved in the middle. That's big enough to have a picnic at. So the inscription is all reason departs is the engraved description of that one. All reason departs. Okay.
So I've prepared our hell picnic. Yeah. We've got cucumber sandwiches and caprese salad.
This dude was like, I want to eat my lunch in hell, and I'm rich, so I can make that happen.
Just popping down to hell for lunch today.
I have a really good table at hell today. Yeah. So this is very, like, ordered Renaissance life, this very dark park arises. And it seems I have judgments about Italians, and I didn't know that I did until I started doing this research. And then I was like, what are these thoughts you have? I didn't realize you had these prejudices. I'm not a fan. I don't know. It seems very Italian to me to say that the impetus for this park was grief at the death of his wife. Like, it took more than 20 years to build this park. So, like, wanting to eat lunch in hell after 20 years seems like a pretty unhealthy grieving process.
Yeah, I mean, get a fucking therapist.
Exactly. Like, is there anything you can do? He's like, this is all I can do. It's 1555. Therapy's not a thing yet.
It's right. Freud won't be born for another 300 years.
I have no guidance except God. Okay, so in trying to find out more about his life, I looked on a lot of Wikipedia and real history pages, which just seem to be just infinite lists of very Italian names, with nothing happening except people being born and people dying and people's property transferring. Occasionally someone would lose his hand to the Spanish in a war that American teaching didn't ever cover. I have no idea what war that was. Or he'd have to, someone's son would be kidnapped and they'd have to buy him back from some government that he was whatever. But the basics here are that the first recorded ancestor of the Orsini family was in Rome in 998 AD. So when we're talking about old money, this is what we're fucking talking about. And the Orsini family is still very powerful, right? Which I'll get to later. So it looks like this family at some point decided that being close to the papacy was the ticket to economic success. Mm-hmm. And so the family floated 3 popes up over time. That's how it works, right? You just get a bunch of people in a room and whichever one floats is the pope?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Who's that? Oh, he's our pope.
The one,
He's our poop.
the one on the ceiling is the pope. Pull him down. Dress him in white.
We need more sandbags for the pope.
I don't know anything about Catholicism. It seems perfectly reasonable that would be how they were chosen. So the first Orsini pope took the name Celestine III. I guess it's Celestine III. Again, I don't know. This is around 1100. And he was called the Nepotist Pope. His nephews were made cardinals. He gave a whole bunch of land to other people in his family, and that land eventually became like the economic base of power for this family. Which is why this guy had the money to build a park of monsters, etc., etc. A few generations later, one Orsini left his children the county of Suana in the Italian Alps. Like, left them a county, right? So this is what we're talking about. And also, one of the members of this family was called Orso. Orso Orsini is like Bear Barrington.
Yeah,
right?
Bear Barrington. Excellent.
I was like, okay. Yeah, this is John Johnson. Okay. It's fine. Okay, so as I'm doing this research, okay, finally, something I recognize, a connection to the Borgias. One of these Orsini was strangled by Cesar Borgia. Okay, I understand. I can place that somewhere, right? It wasn't the one who designed the park, but that's okay. We're still getting warmer, trying to get a beat on this guy's family. Okay, so then in an article from the New York Times Review of Books from 1972, the venerable critic Edmund Wilson apparently was like reviewing a book that was written about this guy, and he says, according to the somewhat fantastic story, one of the Orsini dukes, whose real name was Pier Francesco, but who was known by the nickname Vicino, designed a garden of a sensationally eccentric kind, which exhibited a varied assortment of grotesque and horripilating figures.
Horripilating?
Horripilating. Do you know what that means? I had to look it up.
No, but it's now my only takeaway from everything you just read. It just supplanted all other knowledge ever in my brain. All I can see is horripilating.
Yeah, it was a story. Now it's a vocabulary list.
Exactly. No, please tell me.
It's when you're afraid and your hair stands up. That's it.
Wow.
Goosebumps.
Wow.
Yeah. Horripilating.
I done been horripilated.
Oh my God, I'm horripilating. Okay.
It sounds so hick.
It is, yeah. Horripilating. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Uh-huh. You're correct. That's either of our ancestors would have said it in exactly that accent. So Wilson goes on to say that the Duke was a hunchback. And this is from a book written by a French person who presumably had access to some kind of historical data that I cannot find on the internet. Mm-hmm. He says the Duke had a hunchback and was embittered because his wife had an affair with his younger brother. So he had his younger brother murdered, in addition to the friend he had murdered, right? And also maybe he killed his wife. Maybe she didn't die when he came home. Maybe he came home from war and he found out and he killed her. Maybe that's a thing. So in any case, he says, the garden was a gesture of defiant misanthropy. He's like, fuck everything. Eat lunch in an ogre. Okay, so after I found that review by Edmund Wilson, my research got super weird. Okay, this is where it turned, okay? As I kept looking into the family, I noticed that I was arriving at like more and more marginal websites. And then I finally landed on an article called Illuminati Bloodlines, the Orsini Family of Rome.
Oh, wow.
Right? I don't know how much of it I want to repeat. I did look at like way more than I thought I would. Let me say off the top, what the fuck is the Illuminati? Anyone who talks about it sounds like the people who comment in all caps with things italicized and bolded and quoted in the comment section of articles on the web. Like, it never made sense to me. I'm not into it. I don't want to do an episode on it. I do not give a fuck, right?
Yeah.
But all roads for this park lead there.
Wow.
I couldn't find any actual history about the family. All I could find was the Illuminati shit. Yeah. So I'm just gonna jump to the point where I realized that I don't want to do an episode on this, and I gotta get out. Like the point at which I'm like, I gotta back out of here. I gotta throw the reverse lights on, beep, 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 and just pull back on out.
Get out of that ogre.
Yeah, horrible. So, this is the quote on this website that killed me. Many researchers believe that the current Duke Orsini of Gravina, which is the only Orsini bloodline left, is the Grey Pope, and is the king of the Holy Roman Papal bloodlines, and is above the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and equal to Breakspear, Aldobrandini, and other papal bloodlines. Okay, that is a quote that is only 3 lines long, and bloodlines is in it 4 times. Like, that's a sign you don't need to be involved in whatever is happening, whatever argument is being created in that thing. You don't, nope. Too much bloodline. Too much bloodline in that. Just, I'm going to continue backing on out. Okay, so I'm done. I'm done with that. I get the same feeling. I got the same feeling reading about this as I get whenever someone talks about the Illuminati.
Yeah.
It's like they have an undiagnosed mental illness, and you're trying to follow it. Like, we want it to make sense. Like, we want any communication to make sense. So we're like, our brains are active and working, and things don't quite match up, and things are, and you're like, is it me? Is it you? Is it me? Let me just say, it's them. It's not us. The problem is clearly them. Do not get involved. Unless the Illuminati is real, and then please don't kill me, because I have no power, and I'm not meaning to make fun of you if you're real. But I don't think, whatever the fuck you've got going on, please just leave me out of it. I don't need to be involved. So that's how I ended up writing about a hunchback duke who built a park out of grief. I started there and ended up in an Illuminati rabbit hole, and I'm now actually afraid to release this episode. So that's the story of the Park of Monsters.
By the way, Illuminati rabbit hole, excellent name for snuffcore film.
So what do we have? We have the softcore was
private prosecution.
The hardcore. I can't remember any of them. I have no memory.
The hardcore was shit. Penal servitude.
Penal servitude, that's right. And then the snuffcore is Illuminati rabbit hole. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it works.
So that is, I mean, but the thing is, I say no, I'm not interested. But what the fuck is a gray pope? And they talk about a black pope too. I'm like, what the? What?
I have no idea.
Well, and then as I looked at all, like I said, it was just like interminable lists of Italian names. I'm like, they've got, I mean, basically 2,000 years of like recorded family history. Like, there's a lot of shit in there, you know? So maybe, I don't know. Whatever. The fuck is a gray pope? Come on. Or anyway, you're probably gonna have to cut all this out. I really don't want the Illuminati. Shit. I don't want the Illuminati to come after me if it's real, please. But the thing is, I'm gonna have to look up what the fuck a gray pope is. Like, I managed to back out of it last night. I was like, no. Mm-mm. But today I'm like, it's daylight again, right? It's safe. What is a gray pope? All right. And those are 2 architectural follies constructed by incredibly rich, fucked up dudes. Yay!
Yay! Excellent. I love it.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah. And apparently the Black Pope is a Jesuit Pope. I don't know anything about
those
Catholicism.
shady Jesuits.
The only thing I know is that they definitely choose the Pope by who floats when they put everybody in a room. That's the only thing I know about Catholicism for sure.
Well, you remember that Sandra Bullock movie, Pope Floats?
Can we please call this episode Pope Floats?
Yes.
Oh, man. Please put the Sandra Bullock parts of that in.
Yeah, I will.
It was a great joke. It deserves to be there. Oh my god.
Pope Floats.
No, I mean, we should probably call it Architectural Follies, but Architectural Follies, Pope Floats. We're finally breaking out the colon for an episode, and it's this one.
Hey, if anything deserves it, it's this episode.
Oh my god.
That was really fun.
I'm glad. Yeah, I felt pretty good about it. Yeah. I was very excited to share it with you. Also something that's not interesting, that is not related to anything we just talked about, but that I am super into, is that I have found a new YouTube channel that I really like.
Oh, do tell.
He is a junior doctor in Cambridge. He's a super nerd. His name is Ali Abdaal, Abdaal. Ali Abdaal. It's probably Abdal. Sorry. Ali Abdaal. Yeah, he's a super smart nerd. And I am not in med school. I am not in med school. I'm not trying to, like, say that the thing I'm studying is on that level of detail at all. However, it's a much greater level of detail and sort of memorization of facts than all of my previous degrees, which are all in humanities. And I can just read and then talk and read and talk, and I can get all that stuff, and it's fine. This is very much like, no, this is this. It's always this, except in these 4 cases. And here, it's basically, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I need help doing it. And he is a great resource because he got like the best exam. He won the award for like doing the best exams at Cambridge. I mean, he's just a test-taking machine. He's going to take the U.S. medical license exam for fun. Just because he's like, I don't really remember much from med school, because you study a lot of things in med school that you don't actually need to know to be the kind of a doctor, which is true, And he's like, and I just like knowing things. I like studying for exams and taking exams. So I'm like, you're amazing. Please tell me everything. So I like him a lot, and he recommends books that I think are going to be interesting as well.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, he's like 27, and he's been a doctor for 2 years. I just don't.
Yeah, he's a fucking genius.
Yeah, and it's great, and he's really nice and friendly, and it's fun to watch. Anyway, I recommend him. We should sign off before we forget.
Yeah, I gotta do my line. My final line. Oh, okay, let's end this. And then you're supposed to go, fine.
Oh, okay. I didn't know I had a script.
Yeah.
I didn't know my
our
cue.
new sign off is me demanding that we end.
Okay.
And then you saying fine. I'm going to leave all this in.
Okay, good.
Okay.
But do you want to actually, yeah.
All right, let's end this.
Fine.
Great. Thank you all for listening.
Yes, it's a pleasure. We have a logo now, which I mentioned last time, because it was a real big win for me. It's not a big deal, but it was a big win for me.
Hey,
so
we are still celebrating that win here at It Chooses You headquarters, everybody.
Logo. Yes, and we're available on iTunes now. So maybe you found this on iTunes. That would be swell. Drop us a
hey,
line.
iTunes.
Hey,
how you
iTunes.
doing?
Drop us a line, itchoosesyou@gmail.com if you want to talk to us. If you want to tell us we're dumb, that seems like a big waste of time on your part. So maybe send nice things if you got something to say. Or waste your own time. That's fine. We won't read it anyway. We'll only read the nice things. And letters from investment bankers who tell us whether or not bond issues are the same as shares and how they differ. Okay. I don't care about the Illuminati, so please don't care about me. I just ignore everything I said about you. I'm so sorry. Unless you're fake, which I think you are, in which case, people, get yourselves together. You gotta be kidding me. What are you spending your time doing? Making websites about this shit. Jesus. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you next week.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.
Testing. Great. Thank you for listening to It Chooses You. Your hosts are Teresa Sparks and Claire Patton. Our theme song is by Bobby Dart. If you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us an email at itchoosesyouPodcast@gmail.com.